Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Walaikum salam, sir.
We're back at the shop, 13th and McKean.
Nighttime action this time.
Yeah, nighttime action. What's going on, brother?
Nothing much, brother. Just the work.
That's it.
Just the work. And the people.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to spread that light as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't us, it's Allah.
It's all about Allah.
Yes, sir.
In the Nation of Islam, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad gives he taught to put much attention on the focusing on the woman.
Absolutely. He said no nation can rise any higher than this woman.
Exactly.
And we're still, because of the condition that we're in, trying to learn what that really means. See, we could say it, but what does it mean?
Well, how would you respond to it? Let's start with that.
Okay. Well, first you got to recognize exactly who she is
Mm-hmm.
and what she is.
Right.
She's the second self of God. That in itself is powerful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, no human being can give birth to a God. If you give birth to a God, that means you have to be a God yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So we in the nation don't refer to our women as goddesses or anything like that. The minister said we don't refer to her like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, since only a God can give birth to a God, we look at the woman as the second self of God.
Right.
So knowing who she is first will help us to understand how to treat her and how important she is.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? She's also the person who was the first teacher. The minister also said the way the baby says Allah from the beginning, he says Mama. So she's very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
So we must understand these things when we say that no nation can rise any higher than this woman. Her mind has to be right.
Right.
And she's so very, very important. Like it says in the Holy Quran, I believe chapter 3, verse 41 or 42, on down to 48. It says that they were disputing, the angels were disputing over who would actually be in charge of the woman. And of course, most of these prophets, like we talked about before, is always dealing with a later date. So these are prophetic utterances that we're listening to. They're speaking a word that's not dealing with the past. It's not a future or a historical word, but it's a futuristic word.
Mm-hmm.
So what woman were the angels disputing over?
Mm-hmm.
It's the black woman that's right here today. That the Christ would come 2,000 years after Jesus the prophet. But they flipped the thing around, like student Minister Rodney was saying last Sunday, and had us looking backwards for the Christ instead of looking forward for him. That he would appear 2,000 years after Jesus the Christ. So that would mean that the black woman in our period of time would be the woman or the race of women that would actually give birth to the Savior.
Okay. Okay. Now, I want to touch on the Savior, but I also wanted to touch on. All right, I heard the Minister Rodney once make a distinction between Mary as a representation of the black woman, Mary, the mother of Jesus.
Yes, sir.
Would you speak to that a little bit?
Well, yes, sir. Mary, the name Mary,
Mm-hmm.
and the Mary figure in Scripture. When we read the New Testament, we see certain names. We see the name John.
Mm-hmm.
We see the name Jesus. We see the name Judas.
Mm-hmm.
But we see the name Mary. Also, we see the name Jonah. Again, prophetically, the proper understanding of these people or these names, when you understand it properly, you understand that the story is a prophetic, futuristic story.
Mm-hmm.
So we have many different types of Marys, and it's almost like they have three names in the New Testament. You see Jesus being on the cross, but then in Acts 5, verse 30, you see him being lynched on a tree.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk about it as though it's the same Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
But under the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, like we said before, the cross represented what we would be bound to or crucified on. That's every black man in America. Where after slavery, we weren't able to come and go as we pleased because our feet were nailed to the cross, our hands were nailed to the cross, so we couldn't do for ourselves. And then a crown of thorns was forced into our heads so we couldn't think for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to Mary, of course we say that she's the Virgin Mary, pregnant without the agency of a man's, or without the agency of a male of this world, that she was pregnant by God himself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we understand that when we have the proper interpretation, it's dealing with a woman or a people. Mary would also represent the whole black nation.
Mm-hmm.
A nation that would be without a man. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Without a prophet, without guidance, without a savior, without any kind of connection at all. For 400 years, we had no guidance, no savior, no messenger. Like the Holy Quran says, that Allah was explaining how he sent every nation some warner, some messenger. But we got no warner, no messenger, as we were forced into 400 years of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of this 400 years, we would be the people or the Mary that would actually give birth to the Savior.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it would be out of us who got no wisdom, no knowledge. God does that to just exercise his power.
Mm-hmm.
That he uses us to announce his coming,
Mm-hmm.
to announce his presence, to take a people that were nothing and put them on the top is only something that Allah God can do himself.
Mm-hmm.
So we are the Mary. And then you have our black woman, our
Mm-hmm.
mothers, you know, our daughters. He deals with them specifically, individually. But it talks about how a Mary, another Mary figure, in the Bible, the New Testament, Luke chapter 8, verse 2. It talks about a Mary who had 7 devils in her.
Mm-hmm.
And 7 devils had to get cast out of her so that she would even be worthy to carry a seed. So all of these things, I don't want to go too long into it because I know you have other questions, but you can go all day with Mary.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just like it talks about Eve in the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
which is really like another Mary, and how she would bruise the devil's head and he would bruise her heel. But we understand that as being the Savior and a female role that the Savior would actually play. Because the masculine role, this is why the Bible uses the term bride and groom.
Right. The bridegroom.
Masculine,
Mm-hmm.
yes, sir. The masculine role is God himself.
Mm-hmm.
And the bridegroom will be his savior for the people.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So these terms are divine terms. Mary is a divine term. Jesus is a divine term.
I remember
That's
that.
just scratching the surface.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just to I remember the minister once talking about how in the scriptures the prophet is styled as a woman. And,
Right.
right.
Yes, sir. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay. So now let me ask you this: historically, women have been mistreated. Why is that, you think?
Well, it was prophetic.
Mm-hmm.
Genesis 15, verse 13 to 15.
Mm-hmm.
Know of a surety, Abraham, that thy seed will be a stranger in a land not theirs.
Mm-hmm.
And they will serve them and they will afflict them 400 years. Well, that 400 years is pointing right to next year. Even though we and the wise ones know that the real date of our 400-year sojourn here in America started in 1555. This is information that you can get from the Library of Congress.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a 64-year hidden history that they didn't want us to know anything about. How they would take a Queen Nzinga, or a King Menelik, or a Mansa Musa, or a Kempavita, to take royalty, black royalty, African royalty, like that, and turn them into a Chicken George, or a Kissy. You see what I'm saying? The 64 years would be so diabolical that they wouldn't even want to show you what they actually did to break our people. So they hid that history. They hid the history of us coming over here on the good ship Jesus. Very hard to teach people about Christianity when the very slave ship that you abused them on was named Jesus. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So with all of that being done, they hid that. That's very, very dirty laundry. They didn't show you the things that they did to us until 1619.
Right. That's what they teach in school. That slavery started in 1619.
That's right.
Yeah, and this.
1619, they pretty much watered it all down because they had a broken man by then. They had a compliant woman and man by then. So of course, once you destroy a people mentally, they'll look at everything backwards. Now good becomes bad and bad becomes good. You say, come on, let's go. Like Harriet Tubman here
Right.
said that she wanted to free 1,000. She freed 1,000 slaves, and she could have freed 1,000 more if we just knew we were slaves. Now that's a messed up condition to be in.
Right.
When you're a slave and don't know
Right.
that you're a slave. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So anyway, we were on this boat, the good ship Jesus, but they erased that out of history, and they said 1619, and the name of that ship, now look at how ironic this is. You know the name of the, and I know I'm not supposed to be asking you questions, but do you know the name of the 1619 slave ship?
No.
You know, Mike? It's called the White Lion.
Okay.
Now say that backwards. Because that's what's going to happen in 2019.
Right.
Now the ticket ladies out there, I just want to let you know she's going this way.
Okay.
She just went down towards Broad Street. But yeah, the White Lion was the name of the slave ship in 1619.
Okay.
And 2019 is the 400 years. It's a sign in these numbers. You have so much going on next year. And inshallah, we will all make it to next year. You know what I mean? And it's a beautiful, beautiful time for the righteous. Where those who Allah God will purify and make his righteous ones. None is righteous, no, not one. But it's a horrible time for the people who are the enemies of the righteous and the enemies of God. So in the book of Malachi, chapter 4, verse 5, I believe, it says, behold, hold on. I will send you Elijah the prophet before the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Look at those words. The great. Normally we look at great like it's good. And dreadful day of the Lord. So it will be great for some and dreadful for others. You see? So that's next year. And this is not prophecy. This is not prophesying. This is recognizing. When you have eyes that can see and ears that can hear, these things were already said by that great man right there, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. That's the reason I can see it now. Because I'm lining my mind up with his mind.
Right.
And once you line your mind up with his mind, who's lined up with the messenger's mind, and now the exalted Christ, when we line our minds up with his mind, then we can see what he sees. And then say what he say. Of course, we'll say it in our own way, but you're only saying what he's saying. But this is when you're lined up. So what I'm looking at right now for next year, 2019, I see these numbers all coming together. I see the 64-year history, because when they acknowledge that we have in fact been here for 400 years, that there's going to be other people that have knowledge. The wise are going to say, we have been here for 464 years. Not just 400 years. We were brought here in Jamestown, Virginia on the good ship Jesus. So all that truth is going to come out. Now here's the whole world, but that 2019, that 1619 date is going to bring all of the world's attention right here on us. And all of these things will be revealed in 2019 when they acknowledge the fact that we've been here for 400 years. But then all of the rest of the truth is going to come out. So I just pray to Almighty God Allah to be here to just witness that glory of the truth that will make us free. Like Jesus said in John 8, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free.
Absolutely.
That's verse 30. I don't like to do verses.
All right, so now on the topic of freedom, in the Nation of Islam, there are sisters who are doctors, who are lawyers, who are also ministers.
Right, and Sister Sophia.
Right. So please speak to that, number one, and number two, what is our role in the freedom, liberation of the woman, of our women?
Well, in the Bible, in the gospel, it said, God says that he will take the foolish things of the earth to confound the wise.
The wise.
So nobody can dispute me or you or us when we say that black people are literally the foolish things of the earth. Not a foolish people, but the foolish people of the earth, right? But he would take us and have us to become so wise. It would have to be a teaching that would make a fool wise enough to confound the wise. The people who are looked at as being wise. You see? So once we wise up, then we'll be able to be not in the valley, but on the mountain tops of Israel as God's chosen people and his guides for the whole world. So if we're the guides, the first thing, like we started off this interview, that has to be a foundation that's laid down by any guide. You must recognize your woman. You must recognize, like I said from the beginning, that no nation can rise any higher than its women. So that would mean that we would have to be wise enough to know how to treat our beautiful, beautiful black queens of the planet Earth. Before any true success can come to us as a people, we have to know how to treat her. And one of the number one ways to treat her is to sit down sometimes and be quiet and learn from the real teacher. Go back to when you were learning from her from the beginning. She doesn't just have a lesson for your baby. We believe that she also has a lesson for the world and a lesson for her man. Once the chains are broken, and the chains were there because when you go back to the fall of man, man meaning man and woman, male and female created he them and called their name Adam, Genesis 5. Once the chains is off the women, she's no longer being punished anymore. See, part of the punishment was for her to bear children in pain, and to serve her husband. So he would be over her, even though she has these gifts and talents of visions and wisdom and knowledge. I mean, here's an intelligent person who we all agree the woman grows faster than a man. Not just physically, but mentally. She matures faster than a man. Now imagine a woman who's mature and wise having to listen to you and me. And they know more than us. That's a punishment. But at the end, when Christ frees us from the punishment, like the man his punishment was to work hard and get no respect for the work that you're doing. I'm working right now. I don't care how my ankles feel. We at the end of the day. I started off saying we at night right now. We standing all day.
Mm-hmm.
But when I go home, I might not get the respect. I'm not going to say I'm not going to get it. I'm going to curse myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I might not get the respect that I feel like I deserve, and you might not get the respect you feel like you deserve. Well, that's a punishment. To work hard and not be looked at as a person who's working hard.
Mm.
And when you look at the black man only, we're the only one that had this stigma planted on us. You know what I mean? We have this stigma just drilled into us, man. Or just plastered onto us.
Mm-hmm.
That the black man runs from work.
Mm-hmm.
That the black man doesn't take care of his family. You took care of little Maya, didn't you? I take care of my children.
Mm-hmm.
We take care of our children, but we don't see us on the news. We see the brother with the pants down and the hat backwards, and the man, they give you that image of the black man who doesn't do anything,
Mm-hmm.
but run around trying to use women. So I'm so thankful for you, brother, that we can make a little noise ourselves, because we do have a lot of black men that do what they're supposed to do. And it's time for us to stop being so quiet. See, we're quiet because we're working so hard. We don't have no time to be running around and talking and stuff, but we need to represent the black man a little better so we can be free by God's permission of our punishment that was on us. We're in the day now of truth, and like I said, the truth will set us all free. It'll set us free as men, but it'll definitely set the woman free when the foolish things of the earth start confounding the wise. We have to train and teach the whole world. The Muslims from Arabia, the Christians, the Jews, the black man and woman now are going to be on the mountaintops of Israel to teach the whole world who the woman is and how she needs to be treated. All praise is due to Allah.
Praise be to Allah. Any other closing thoughts?
Well, it would free her up because she's speaking now. She's teaching now. That's my closing thought.
Right, the nature that she was created in, the first teacher.
Exactly. So
Gotcha.
the Nation of Islam has Sister Ava. The Nation of Islam has Sister Sandy. The Nation of Islam has sisters who can go, man.
That's right.
You know what I mean? There ain't no brother out there can out teach Sister Ava. You know, we had our sister right here in Philadelphia. I can't leave her out. Sister Linda was speaking last week. You know what I mean? So we got sisters laying it down now.
That's right.
And we're going to teach the other people and the other mosques and the other churches and the other masjids, because, you know, we're so divided, we can't even say mosque together. And the masjids, we out of respect, we say it just the way you want to say it. So the people of Jehovah, the people of Yahweh, the people of Jah, you know what I mean? Anything you want to call Allah. This is my closing remark. We are the people and the guides today that's going to show a demonstration of true godliness, male and female.
Wonderful.
Yes, sir.
We thank you for your time once again, my brother.
Thank you for your time, brother.
Yep.
All praise is due to Allah.
Praise be to Allah. Assalamu
Till we meet
alaikum.
again, inshallah.
Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.